Friends, across the country, Canadians are tired of this crisis. They're tired of not seeing their friends or their family. They're tired of worrying that they'll become sick. They're tired of the restrictions. They're tired of the division. They're tired of being tired. When I look across Canada, you know what I see right now? Fear. Fear that things will never go back to how they were. Fear of empty shelves. Fear of spiraling house prices. Fear that your children's mental health will continue to get worse. Fear of a cost of living that is so high it's impossible to meet. Les Canadiens et Québécois ont peur de l'augmentation du coût de la vie qui est insupportable. Le pays est fatigué. I know because I experience that same fear that the world I leave for my children will be more expensive, and that for the first time in memory, we'll be leaving the next generation worse off than before. But most of all, a fear that the fabric of our society is becoming irreparably damaged, and a fear not just that there are no solutions, but that nobody is interested in even finding them. We see no better example of this than the events of this past weekend. What would motivate tens of thousands of people to drive to their nation's capital? Yes, there is anger, but underpinning that is fear. Fear that the world is changing. Fear that they will be left behind. Fear that they have no voice in this society. Fear that life will never return to normal. Now, let me be clear. We are a democracy. I know this better than anyone. Once the people have had their say in an election, that's it, despite what you might wish. Despite the fear-mongering of the Prime Minister and others, we only saw a handful of unacceptable incidents this weekend. Hateful flags, disrespect for the tomb of the unknown soldier. And I unequivocally condemned them as a veteran and as a Canadian. In fact, I condemn anyone who seeks to exploit people's understandable fear to stoke extremism. And anyone who does that should take a long, hard look at themselves in the mirror. Il y avait une petite minorité d'extrémistes à cette manifestation, comme dans pratiquement toutes les manifestations. Je les condamne sans hésiter. Mais ça ne m'empêche pas d'écouter les Canadiens qui ont peur, qui s'inquiètent et qui sont préoccupés. You know, the other thing about being a democracy, it's giving people a voice. It's about showing leadership by listening, not by ignoring. I was asked about this in the campaign every single day, because the issue now is how we move past this crisis together in a way that protects Canadian society and the image of Canada that we have as a country that is prosperous, tolerant, and free. I said this, that we need to listen to every Canadian, that we might disagree with them, but that we respect them. And that living in a democratic society means giving every Canadian a voice. But that also means listening to that voice. I said that leadership was persuading people, even if they disagreed with you. But you know what the Prime Minister did? He mocked the idea that we should listen to people who are concerned, people who are afraid. I am a supporter of vaccines. I have been crystal clear on this point. I got my vaccine as soon as I could, and I urged procurement way back when the government was still dragging its feet. But I was also very clear we had two paths ahead of us. The first route, where we work together, where we seek to persuade, and where we get through it. The second route was one where we sought to make vaccines a wedge issue, where we would open up divisions in our society for political gain. I tried to take the high road. The Prime Minister did not. Every day he would stand up and demonize Canadians. He showed he was unconcerned about shattering our country's fragile unity so long as he got reelected. That even when it turned out that he was proposing policies identical to ours, he was somehow better, and that it was worth permanently scarring our nation to eke out a few votes. And you know what? It worked. We as a country need to ask ourselves, how did we end up with division and vaccine politics that look more like America's than anywhere else? How did Canada, a country that has always prized dialogue, discussion, moderation, end up with this anger and spite in our politics? The Prime Minister must ask himself. Yes, he won, but at what cost? For most people, asking for a majority government in a time of national crisis and being denied one would be a wake-up call. A reminder that winning 32% of the vote doesn't mean that you can act like you speak for all Canadians. That you need to practice the values that make Canada great. Humility, acceptance, tolerance, patience, and understanding. Not for this Prime Minister, who has decided that 32% of the vote means he speaks for all Canada, and that it's perfectly okay to ignore or to demonize portions of the country that are worried, that are scared. That at no point he should check himself or consider the role he has played in stoking this division. I've heard I should speak more for myself and not always follow the script. I think I read that somewhere very recently. So here is what I think. I'm of the belief that we're all Canadians, that what unites us is the most important thing, that most Canadians don't think of themselves as conservative, as liberal, as NDP, that they want a better government. Ils veulent de l'unité. Ils veulent que les choses reviennent à la normale. Et ils veulent retrouver une vie normale. Last year, I stood up and pointed out the things that Canada needed to tackle the cost of living, to get borrowing and spending under control for our kids, and to invest in health, especially mental health. So let's focus on those. Let's get going. And you know, I'll meet anyone who wants to talk about those issues and anyone who wants to bring Canadians together. Of course, that doesn't mean that I agree with everything I hear, but I firmly believe we all deserve a voice and we all deserve a united Canada, now more than ever. Je suis fier de ce pays. Je crois vraiment que nous avons tous droit à notre opinion aussi au Canada.